He didn't realize it was the last normal morning of his life until years later, when the silence finally made sense. By the time the truth reached him, there was nothing left to fix, only something left to understand. Daniel was the kind of man people trusted without thinking about it. He paid his bills on time. He showed up to work early. He listened more than he spoke. At 42, he had built what most would call a stable life, a modest home in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio, a steady job in logistics management, and a marriage that looked calm from the outside. Nothing about Daniel's life was dramatic, and that was exactly the problem. For years, he believed that as long as nothing was wrong, everything must be right. He confused stability with happiness, routine with purpose. His days followed the same pattern. Wake up at 6:10 a.m., shower, coffee, drive to work, come home around 6:30 p.m., eat dinner, watch TV, sleep. His wife Claire once joked that their life ran on autopilot. At the time, Daniel smiled and said, "That's not a bad thing." But autopilot has a way of turning people into passengers in their own lives. Claire had been different when they first met. Curious, expressive, always asking questions about people, ideas, and the future. Over time, her questions became fewer. Her laughter came less often. Daniel noticed, but not deeply enough to stop and ask why. When she said things like, "Do you ever feel like we're just existing?" Daniel heard it as stress, not a signal. He believed love, like everything else, would take care of itself if he didn't interfere too much. That belief would cost him more than he ever imagined. Daniel didn't avoid difficult conversations out of cruelty. He avoided them out of discomfort. He told himself he was protecting the peace. In reality, he was protecting his comfort. When Claire tried to talk about feeling lonely, he offered solutions instead of presence. When she asked for emotional closeness, he offered practical fixes. When she grew quiet, he assumed she needed space. He never asked the question that mattered most: what are you not saying? Psychologically, Daniel lived in a state many adults recognize but rarely name: emotional postponement. The belief that important conversations could always happen later, when things were less busy, less tense, less inconvenient. Later became his favorite word. Later, he'd listen more. Later, he'd show appreciation. Later, he'd slow down. But later is not a promise. It's an assumption, and assumptions have expiration dates. The turning point didn't arrive as an explosion. It arrived as an envelope. Daniel came home one Thursday evening to find it resting neatly on the kitchen table. No drama, no note attached, just an envelope with his name written in Claire's careful handwriting. Inside were divorce papers. No argument, no shouting, no warning signs that felt obvious in hindsight. Claire wasn't home. At first, Daniel felt confused, then irritated, then strangely calm. He told himself there must be a mistake. People didn't just leave like this, not without a final conversation. He called her phone, straight to voicemail. Hours passed. When she finally texted, the message was short. "I'm safe. I need time. I've already explained myself in ways you didn't hear." That sentence would replay in his mind for years. Daniel spent the night sitting on the couch staring at a blank TV screen, waiting for emotions to arrive on schedule. They didn't. Instead, a quiet anxiety settled in, something unfamiliar and unsettling. A sense that something important had slipped past him while he wasn't looking. He believed he still had time to fix it. He was wrong. The divorce finalized quickly. Claire didn't fight. She didn't ask for more than her share. She didn't explain herself again. That was the hardest part. Daniel expected anger, tears, accusations, closure. Instead, he got distance. And distance forces reflection. For the first time in his adult life, Daniel was alone in a way that couldn't be filled with distractions. No shared routines, no familiar presence, no background noise of another human life moving alongside his. Silence became a mirror. He replayed moments he once considered insignificant. The times Claire had paused before speaking, the evenings she stared out the window, the way she stopped asking him how his day was. These were not random behaviors. They were quiet exits. Psychologically, Daniel began to understand something most people learn too late. People don't leave suddenly. They leave slowly, internally, long before their physical departure. By the time Claire left the house, she had already left the relationship, and Daniel had been waving goodbye without knowing it. Months passed. Daniel tried dating, tried staying busy, tried convincing himself that time heals everything. But time doesn't heal what awareness refuses to touch. One night, while cleaning out a drawer, he found an old anniversary card Claire had written years earlier. It read, "I don't need perfection. I just need to feel seen." That was the moment. Not the divorce, not the empty house, not the signed papers. The moment he realized it was too late was when he understood exactly what she had needed and recognized he could have given it, but didn't. Regret is not loud. It doesn't scream. It whispers. And once you hear it clearly, it never stops. Daniel's story isn't about divorce. It's about attention. About the dangerous myth that relationships survive on intention alone. About the psychological blind spot that convinces us that what feels stable must be healthy. The life lesson Daniel learned was painfully simple. Presence delayed becomes presence denied. Listening later becomes silence now. Love assumed becomes love questioned. Time taken for granted becomes time lost. Most life-changing decisions are not dramatic. They are quiet habits repeated daily, choosing comforts over connection, routine over reflection, silence over honesty. Daniel realized that emotional neglect is rarely intentional. It's usually unconscious, but the consequences are just as real. Years later, Daniel still wakes up early. The house is quiet, but now he understands the difference between peace and absence. Sometimes he wonders how many moments in his life he labeled as not urgent, unaware they were irreversible. And maybe that's the real question for all of us. What in your life feels stable, but is actually waiting for your attention before it's too late?